Good morning, everyone. As I've already said, but some of you may have missed if you just came in, this is the Substance Use Response Group, the SURG's Response Subcommittee's August 5th, 2025 meeting. And we'll start with agenda item number 1, which is call to order and roll call first for quorum. Crystal.
Thank you, Chair Kearns. Dr. Shayla Holmes.
Present.
Dr. Terry Kearns.
Present.
Nancy Lindler. Christine Payson.
Present.
Senator Jeff Stone. Okay, well, as we stated before, Chair Kearns, we have 3 out of 5 members, so we do have a quorum for our meeting today. And if other members join, I will let you know.
Great, thank you. And I just also wanted to highlight that Assembly Member Gray was a member of this group, but he's resigned his position with the Assembly. So that is a vacancy, and we're looking to fill, but that position has not been filled yet. So just of note to the committee members. Let's move on to agenda item number 2, which is public comment. And public comment will be received via the Zoom meeting. Public comment should be limited to 3 minutes per person. This is the period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion on those comments. No action may be taken upon a matter raised during a period devoted to comments by the general public until the matter itself has been specifically included on an agenda as an item upon which action may be taken, pursuant to NRS 241.020. And just of note, please refraining from commenting outside the designated public comment periods unless specifically called upon by myself or SEI staff. Will mute people speaking outside of public comment unless called upon by the chair. Do we have any public comment? I am not seeing any hands raised.
I don't see any hands raised either. I also wanted to note that please refrain from using the chat. That is part of the public document for the meeting, but we prefer not to use chat. So if anybody does have public comment, I don't know, Dr. Kearns, if you want to leave it open longer or close that item.
Let me just, I did not read. If you're dialing in from a phone, dial 719-359-4580. When prompted, enter the meeting ID 878-2168-8019, and then press *6 so the host can prompt you to unmute. Still seeing or hearing no one. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 3, review and approve the minutes from June 3rd, 2025 response subcommittee meeting. Is there any corrections, or do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Shayla Holmes. I have no corrections, and I would make a motion to approve the June 3rd meeting minutes.
Thank you, Dr.
And I'll second.
Great, thank you, Dr. Holmes, for the motion, and Christine Payson for the second. We'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the June 3rd meeting minutes are approved, as are. And I just wanted to highlight, I know that the meeting minutes from the 5/14 meeting were also included, and reviewing the materials for this meeting, I said that I would give an update on where the incinerator locations were when we were having the discussion on the drug take-back days. And these were the incinerators that the Attorney General's office purchased. Those incinerator locations are in 5 counties spread throughout the state. There's one in Story County, one in Mineral County, one in Nye County, one in Elko, and then one in Boulder City. And it's law enforcement that took possession of all of those. So I just wanted to do my due diligence and provide that update. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 4, which we have a presentation on the Behavioral Health Education Retention and Expansion Network of Nevada, Be Here Nevada, or Be Here NV. And at this point, it's discussion only, just so you know. And we welcome Dr. Sarah Hunt, who is the Executive Director of Be Here Nevada, and Dr. Roberta Miranda Alfonso, who is the Associate Director of Recruitment and Outreach for the Kirk Kevorkian School of Medicine at UNLV. This presentation relates to the subcommittee's responsibility to evaluate the effects of substance use disorders on the economy of the state. I will pass it off to you, Drs. Hunt and Dr. Miranda Alfonso.
Great. Thank you so much. For the record, Sarah Hunt, Executive Director for Be Here Nevada. It's a pleasure to be back with you all. I think I presented to you all last July, so it's been about a year. And this is a great opportunity for us to share some of the work that we have been developing over the past year for Be Here Nevada. And next slide, please. So I think everybody is somewhat familiar with how we started, but just in case. So we, Be Here Nevada was started from Assembly Bill 37 that passed in the 2023 Nevada legislative session. And that bill asked the Nevada system of higher education to establish a designated behavioral health workforce development center. So in recognition that we continue to have significant shortages of behavioral health professions across the state, we were created to do some kind of intensive pipeline workforce development. This bill was sponsored again by the Rural Regional Behavioral Health Policy Board. And we were fortunate to have that bill passed with a fiscal note that established us financially for the 2023 to 2025 biennium. Next slide, please. A little bit more about the specific priorities or some of the objectives that were called out in that bill. So we are tasked with increasing the number of high school students that are pursuing behavioral health degrees when they come out of our local high schools in our state, increase the number of graduates from our Nevada system of higher education programs who then move on to internship and practice in Nevada. Increase the number of behavioral health providers with specialty training to address some of the most critical shortage areas, and increase the number of supervisors and sites for students and postgraduates, as well as lower the amount of time between graduation and then registration or licensure. Next slide, please. So those priorities kind of boil down to these 3 main objectives. So the work of Be Here Nevada is to go out and to recruit. So we want to start talking about those different behavioral health careers, certainly including addiction counseling early on. So we do a lot of work in the K through 12 space, which I will feature in the next few slides. We also then want to make sure we're featuring the education pathways that we have within the Nevada system of higher education. So if we get youth or even adults that are interested in coming into behavioral health careers, we want to make sure which door is most accessible to them to step into within the Nevada system of higher education, whether it's to start with a certificate or a bachelor's degree, master's, or any of our other professional degree programs. And then we want to work on the retention side of this pipeline. So if we get folks interested in the careers, we keep them here to educate them, then what is most helpful to encourage their retention? So to move forward after they graduate with their internship and getting licensed or registered to practice. Next slide. Thank you. So I'm going to take a few slides here to just talk about what we're doing on that recruitment side of the pipeline. So what do we do to engage our youth about the different behavioral health careers? That photo of myself and our K through 12 specialist, Jill Mannett, was from our very first high school career fair that we did in March 2024 in Fernley High School. So since then, basically in this last academic year, through showing up at a lot of different high school career fairs, we were able to start engaging with over 1,000 students, mostly high school students, but some middle school students as well. We were in outreach events in over 9 counties. And one of the things that we do when we set up our table at these high school career fairs is we feature the Nevada Healthcare Career Book. And that's a book that's put out by the UNR Office of Statewide Initiatives. And so we carry stacks of those with us. And through all of those outreach events last academic year, we were able to distribute over 700 of those books. And in those books, there is a specific section that talks about mental and behavioral health careers. So we always make sure we bookmark that and direct all of the youth's attention to that section. Next slide, please. One of the other things that we've been able to establish that Dr. Mannett has done a great job of doing is outreach to the career and technical education high school programs across our state that specifically have what they call the Human and Social Services Career and Technical Education track. That is preparing high school students that have some interest in a helping profession, but maybe not medical focused or nursing focused. Right now, we have 3 of those human and social services career and technical education programs across the state, 2 up in Reno and 1 in Las Vegas. So Dr. Mannett has done a great job of building a relationship with the teacher, Ronnie Green, at Reed High School in Reno, who teaches that career technical education program. What Jill has been able to do is provide different content about behavioral health careers to those students, bring in what they call industry expert guest speakers. So we've been able to bring in therapists to talk about what they do in their jobs. We've been able to bring in some specific training for those students that are interested in the helping careers. For example, we helped facilitate a speaker to come in and talk about adverse childhood experiences and what ACEs means. We also are focusing on how do we help recruit more students to go into those CTE programs. So looking at what middle schools are feeding into those high schools that have those 3 high schools that have the Human and Social Services CTE track. Next slide, please. And one other initiative I want to feature in kind of this recruitment, especially of our youth, in June of this year, Be Here had its very first behavioral health career summer camp. And we hosted that at UNLV. And we were fortunate to have 16 campers go through our 4-day, 3-night, overnight in the dorms camp. And we provided a lot of specific content about behavioral health careers. And we were able to partner that with UNLV bringing in some content about just college readiness. So if you're interested in these careers and you see a pathway to UNLV, what do you need to do as a high schooler to start thinking about that college readiness? So our campers ranged in age from 14 to 17. The majority of them were in 10th grade, age 16, from the Las Vegas and Henderson area. And we had 6 male participants and 10 female participants. And this is one of the kind of night out activities that we got to do. We went to the Neon Museum and had a lot of fun. And that logo was on our camp t-shirts that all of the campers got to have. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that the campers worked on over those 4 days is they worked in teams and they all drew a different healthcare or mental health career and had to kind of do their research on what that career does, what training you need to do that for that career, what is kind of the going salary rate for that career, and they worked on then poster boards to talk about these careers. The final event, the night that the parents, caregivers were coming to pick up their campers, then our campers put on a career fair. So they had their poster boards there and they stood in front of their poster boards and talked about their careers. So we had a special guest come to our final event. That's Dr. Allison Netsky, the interim dean of the Kirk Kerkorian School of Medicine, also a psychiatrist. So she was really interested in seeing the different poster boards and talking to the students that picked psychiatry as their career presentation. Next slide, please. We also collected, those are more of the posters that you can see from the different careers. So clinical professional counseling, marriage and family therapists, social workers. We did have a group that had addiction counselors as well. Apologies that that picture did not make up this slide for this group, but next slide, please. We also collected some data from this camp. So we had the campers fill out a pre-survey just about their knowledge about different behavioral health careers, and then they had the same survey given to them after the camp was over. You can see it may be a little bit difficult on this slide, but the two columns to the left, the two bar graphs there, you have psychiatry and psychology. They look pretty similar. A lot of students already know about psychiatry, psychology, what those are, similar to social work. But what was interesting is if you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth bar graphs to the left, that's substance use counseling. So we saw a nice increase in the awareness of this is a specific healthcare career. So what we found is we have a great data analyst, and she found that the change in just knowledge about the different careers was statistically significant, as they like to say. Next slide, please. And then again, we just kind of surveyed the campers before they started camp about their overall awareness of the career pathways, but also the education requirements to go into these behavioral health careers. And again, we saw a nice increase in knowledge in the post-camp surveys. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and we can go to the next slide. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Roberta Miranda.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hunt. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everybody. Roberta Miranda Alfonso for the record. I am happy to talk to you about picking up where Dr. Hunt was sharing a little bit about our K through 12 initiatives. My role as the Associate Director of Recruitment and Outreach is intended to work with some of our more adult populations. So as Dr. Mannett works with those in middle school, high school, preparing for the academic track, that's where I'll step in and try to support those individuals, trying to avoid any sort of gaps or confusion about the college process, especially for those interested in a human services or addiction field, and help guide them into the appropriate NG institutions that will help them achieve their goals. So a lot of what I do is some education and then also work on some retention, meaning that those who are already in the field, what we can do to support them, build initiatives, and I'll speak a little bit to that. A little bit about my background. I'm also an addiction counselor and supervisor, and so been so for over 20 years, and also an educator in higher education, both UNLV and Nevada State for many years teaching addiction classes. So this is truly a passion for me, and now representing this type of expansion of our workforce in this capacity to go back into these arenas and really try to ignite passion and excitement and information for potential new addiction counselors. Next slide, please. So I'd just like to briefly talk a little bit about just some of the initiatives we're doing more in the academic and adult areas. One is that we're very excited that we were able to have a partnership with Molina Healthcare to provide a grant for clinical supervision. As we know, many providers have to pay for supervision out of pocket, and sometimes that serves as a barrier to licensure, sometimes causes delays in getting licensed. And so we were very happy to be able to provide this in our most recent cycle to 27 awardees to help pay for part of their supervision fees. Next slide, please. Thank you. In order to expand the workforce, we also understand that we also need to expand the supervision workforce. So we've been really excited about working with UNR in this pilot program that it involves a college course offered at UNR that prepares and helps licensed individual meet the criteria to pursue a supervision license or to become eligible to be state approved supervisors. So in this course, as a result, because it's not only a 3-credit course, but it also involves supervision of supervision and mentorship and guidance. So it really prepares these licensed individuals to effortlessly join the supervision workforce, resulted in potentially 16 new clinical supervisors for our state. And this includes the entire state of Nevada. So we found that's very exciting. So exciting that we are working with them again to offer this class this fall. Next slide, please. Another initiative that we are doing is to work on what we call these courses or these modules. Our different NSHE institutions, whether it's our community colleges or graduate programs, all use this learning format called Canvas. And so my colleagues and I are developing NSHE courses that could be uploaded into different professors' courses. And these introduce students, undergraduate and graduate. And so we modify that so there is a difference in just as far as difficulty and ability, but we are introducing these courses into just lots of different programming. So it exposes whether it's an integrated program or a social work program or a human services program could be incorporated, and it exposes students to the potential of different behavioral health career tracks, including addiction and problem gambling tracks. Okay, next slide, please. And then we're also very excited to use our own website as a resource. Another role that I do is, in addition to working with potential students and enrolled students, is to go out to different career fairs. So working with Workforce Connections, finding other outreach opportunities to reach those who are perhaps individuals who are thinking about coming and joining the behavioral health field. Maybe this is a second or third career option. Maybe they have a lived experience and they're really excited, but they don't know what first steps to take. So I do my best to provide that information at these outreach events. But in addition to that, what we're doing is designing our website to also answer some of those questions. So when the individuals go back and say, well, what can I do at a certificate level again? What does addiction counseling look like again? That we have this right here on our website. And so we're expanding this, so it's going to add more and more resources. So then it's will basically serve like as a hub of information. Okay, next slide, please. And then in addition to that, this will work in concurrent to that website, the site you just saw. So this is all part of our website. This is a different tab. So then once they are interested in taking that step in the educational realm, this provides information on our different NSHE institutions, and it goes really detailed. So if you click into, for example, Nevada State University, this is a screenshot, so I can't demonstrate it now, but if you have a moment, we'd love for you to check it out. Then it will then lead you to some information about what different behavioral health tracks are offered at the different institutions. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, some other events. We also are offering a virtual summit. We just had our first one in the spring semester, and this is where at first we invited just enrolled students, but we found that there was such an interest for just anybody, like I mentioned, who is just interested in learning more about the behavioral health fields. We intended this to be just a virtual workshop, a half-day workshop that featured different types of providers. So there are breakout sessions, so ranging from more certificate level topics to supervision topics. And so really, again, part of that recruitment piece is attracting more individuals into this field and at a free event. And then again, because it's virtual, it can be reached across the state. So whether you're in the rural areas, frontier areas, or more the urban areas, you had the opportunity to join the summit, as well as being able to then connect with some of those they were all experienced providers. Those providers offered to also serve as just ongoing contacts for these individuals who might be interested in learning more about the different topics. So we had such a great turnout that we're going to offer it again in the fall. So really excited about that. So as much as we can expose these different behavioral health career tracks and academic tracks, the better. Okay, next slide. And then, yes, and then we also been conducting some focus groups. So we held a focus group for community health workers, and yesterday you'll see there's a place mark of, that's why there's not a fancy a picture, because we just hosted this yesterday. So we hosted a focus group for our peer recovery support specialists across the state of Nevada. And the reason that we are conducting these focus groups is to collect pertinent data from those who are actually in these roles. So I'll ask questions as far as job satisfaction. How did you find out about becoming a PRSS? What does a day look like for you? Are you interested in upskilling? So trying to collect as much data so then it really does inform our initiatives as far as recruitment and retention. So this is part of, we just conducted this yesterday. We're going to analyze some of those responses. I've also administered a survey that they can complete on their own. And so combining that data information, we hope to put together a nice report that will have some recommendations for future initiatives. All right, I think I just maybe have one or two more. Oh yeah, this has a lot of information. I won't list all of this because I know we're running out of time, but just some other things. We're just out there. We love doing outreach events. I'm also a problem gambling counselor. And so anything I could do to be part of these roundtable discussions about promoting problem gambling internships and opportunities and letting people know about this as a career track, the better. Working with first generation students, working on creating directories and supports for individuals who, again, kind of get a little lost in the weeds, don't know those next steps. We hope to be that hub of information. Okay, next slide. And then I'm going to hand this back to Dr. Hunt.
Thank you. So Sarah Hunt for the record again. So we were fortunate to bring on an associate director for technical assistance and policy. So in this picture on the left is Dr. Ashley Noel Pruitt. And so one of the things that we would like to start doing is building kind of our portfolio in providing some technical assistance on the business side of providing behavioral health care, but also engaging in policy. And so we were somewhat active. This was our very first legislative session, 2025. One of the things that we did is through UNLV Government Affairs, we worked with Assemblymember De Silva on Assembly Bill 269. So in the 2023 session, there was a bill from the State Treasurer's Office that created a new student loan repayment program now called Nevada HEAL. And it is to provide student loan repayment to health care providers across the state. However, in the list of providers approved in that first bill, licensed marriage and family therapists were left out, as well as addiction counselors and problem gambling counselors. So we worked with Assemblymember De Silva to add that language into that statute, and that passed. So those providers will be able to now apply for that loan repayment program. And one of the other things that we did is we provided some information to those that were sponsoring Senate Bill 165 that now is developing a new bachelor's level provider type. And so will be referred to as a behavioral health and wellness practitioner. So we just shared some content and information about the different bachelor's programs that we already have within the Nevada system of higher education and how this new provider type might be able to integrate into those academic programs. So next slide, please. I think that is it for us. If you scan our QR code, you will be shown links to follow us on all our different social media platforms. And we also put out a really informative monthly newsletter. So if you're not already on our listserv, please join. It's a great way for us to show, where we are at and what we're doing, but also highlight different funding opportunities, like the Molina funding opportunity that we had and some others. So happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Hunt and Miranda Alfonso, thank you so much for the update. You and your team have done a lot in this past year, so we really appreciate it. I wanted to highlight too that our subcommittee member, Nancy Lindler, I noticed she has joined us, so just for the record, and I will open it up for any questions from committee members.
This is Shayla Holmes. I don't have a question. I just want to say I'm super excited to see everything that you guys have done in the past year. I've been on the receiving end of several of your presentations over the last year and seeing where you guys were wanting to go and all of those things, and to see what you've done just makes me very hopeful. And so I'm excited for our state and the work you guys are doing. So thank you.
Sarah, for the record, thank you so much for that feedback. We have had a lot of growth in the past year, and it's because of the wonderful team that we are fortunate to have it be here. I will note that we do now have a data analyst. So we're hoping to really put together a nice data dashboard on our website that will track behavioral health numbers and be able to maybe track some trends over time. So that is in the works. More to come on that.
Thank you for that update, Dr. Hunt. I did have a couple of questions. I noted on the survey you did with your campers that CHW was something, and it seemed like there was a large increase in knowledge about the CHWs, and I just wondered interest in that and any additional people deciding maybe to do that as a short term as they go into the longer term educational programs.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Sarah Hunt again for the record. One of the things, going back to the work we're doing, the career and technical education class. So that specific class at Reed High School, our staff member, Dr. Mannett, was able to connect that teacher with the CHW training program through High Sierra AHEC. And then so some of those students got to start that training program and then come out of high school with their CHW certificate. So it is, we try to highlight the different certificate level entry points into behavioral health careers. What we find sometimes is when we show up at high school career fairs, some students are, yes, I'm going to be a psychiatrist, social worker, or they're interested in being a therapist. And when you talk about master's degrees and things like that, they start to glaze over. So we then quickly go to, but here are some really good entry points through just a certificate. And so we do see that community health workers as one of those entry points. And also, again, to what Dr. Miranda was referencing, we also want to then talk to those CHWs that have been out in the field for a while, especially in the rural settings, to see if they are ever interested in maybe if they need to come back in to get a bachelor's in maybe social work or psychology and move up with their degree and their work. So that is some of the reasons and why we kind of highlight the CHW certificate along with the PRSS stuff too.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that kind of leads into my next question. Having formerly been a practicing registered nurse. I know there was a big push at one time for like the accelerator programs for LPN to RN or diploma RN to bachelor's RN. And I know you did talk that you have accelerated programs. Is that something like for the CHW and PRSS to go into some of these, or what specifically are those accelerated programs?
Yeah, Sarah Hunt again for the record. So it's interesting in behavioral health, we are still a little bit slow on the accelerated program, use of accelerated programs, I will say. However, one of the things that we are doing at the Nevada System of Higher Education level, NSHE, they are having more conversations about what would that look like? Can we count past work experience for some credits? And so that's one of the things that we are wanting to kind of have those conversations with NSHE to see what that would look like. We do know that there's still some sticking points. If someone gets their certificate, either as a CHW or a mental health tech, and then wants to come back and get their bachelor's, sometimes some of those credits aren't transferring. So that slows down things. So those are ongoing conversations that we're having.
Great, thank you for that update. And this is my last question, I promise. And I'll open it up to the committee again if they have any questions. So in all the meetings that I attend, and even within our SURG meetings, we often hear some issues with reimbursement rates for those in the behavioral health professions. And I wonder twofold, does that come up in any of your focus groups or anything about, pay for these types of workers? And also, is that something that's being looked at for future legislation from your group or any other groups you're aware of?
Good question, Sarah Hunt for the record again. Number one, yes, that comes up. That has been a long-standing issue. And two, it is something that we're always looking at. What does that look like from the provider side, but from the insurance provider side too? What needs to happen there to increase the reimbursement rates? There were quite a few, I would say a handful of bills that were looking at mental health parity in this last session. So again, trying to bill and offer services at the same rate or in the same way that we receive medical care. And so I think this is going to be an ongoing issue. I don't know what the fix is for that, but it is something that we want to continue to follow because that really affects the retention of our workforce.
Yeah, thank you for this. Not a question, but a comment. I know one of our presenters from our last meeting was Dr. Kelly Morgan, and just talking about some of the issues getting peers into the emergency departments or hired by ERs and hospitals. So something else we're looking at as well. Are there any other questions from committee members now that I've taken up the time? Again, Drs. Hunt and Miranda Alfonso, thank you so much. This is just a Herculean effort that you guys are working on, and we appreciate the update, and however we can support, we look to do that.
Thank you, Sarah Hunt, again for the record. Thank you again for this opportunity to provide an update, and we thank you for all the work that this committee is doing as well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. At this point, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is our next presentation on recidivism and desistance. And this presentation relates to the response subcommittee's preliminary recommendation to revise the prior recommendation to also include desistance. And that recommendation was to recommend state agencies under the legislative, judicial, and executive branches involved with deflection and diversion programs have a comprehensive definition of recidivism and policies related to measuring and reporting recidivism. At this point, I would like to hand it over to TJ Mills, who's the program coordinator for the bridge at Washoe County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning, TJ Mills for the record. Next slide, please. So thank you for the opportunity to present on something that we at the Washoe County Sheriff's Office feel is absolutely critical to the future of effective reentry. And that is aligning statewide recidivism data with meaningful program level outcomes. And for us, we view reentry not as a reward or a privilege for individuals who've done bad things and made mistakes. This is a public safety investment. And for us, nearly everyone in our facility, the fact is they will be returning back into our community or into a community. So reentry is really about preparing them to succeed when they are released back into a community. And what guides us is this belief that it's better to prevent the next crime than to have to punish the next crime. So today, I'd like to walk you through our department's transformation and share how we've begun incorporating the concept of desistance to better evaluate whether our programming is truly changing behavior. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about myself. Again, my name is TJ Mills, and I coordinate programming here at the Bridge at Washoe County Sheriff's Office. And that's our jail-based pre-release reentry program. And our mission is rooted in a simple but powerful vision. That is a community where every individual, no matter their past, has the opportunity for successful reentry after incarceration. Our programming provides structure, tools, support, but more importantly, it's guided in the question of what is successful reentry? And to us, it means reducing recidivism and increasing long-term stability. We believe that stability, whether that be housing, employment, or relationships, for example, is the lever that ultimately drives down recidivism. Next slide, please. So, where we started. When I joined this department approximately 2 years ago, the Bridge, which was then known as Programs, was struggling. And some of those reasons were we lacked a stable funding structure backed by Washoe County. And that's meant that historically our department is staffed on a rotating special assignment basis. So staff rotated through on these temporary assignments, which generally lasted from 1 to 2 years. And that also meant that we constantly lost deep institutional knowledge. We lost social capital, and we also lost program and policy design as a result of that churn. And when I came down here, as I was asking, why do we do things this way? One of the common answers was, well, that's the way that we've always done it. So our processes as a result of this churn were relatively outdated. Our programming was scattered and misaligned. And at least for this presentation, what I think is most meaningful is that we lacked a true way to measure what was working or what wasn't. Next slide, please. So I came into this agency with what I believe are two important perspectives for what we're trying to accomplish here. The first of those perspectives is lived experience. I spent a fair amount of time as an inmate of this very facility as a young man, and I know intimately what it feels like to desperately want and need to change and not know how to do that. And second, a systems perspective. Upon getting my life together, I helped launch a very successful construction business in the private industry. And I swung a hammer all day, every day, and I ran our business in the afternoons, and I attended night school at UNR to earn my MBA. And for us, what that amounted to is I learned that if we didn't succeed, we didn't eat and we didn't put food on our family's tables. So we had to constantly refine how we worked with a genuine urgency every single day. So the only thing that mattered for us was improving our processes and getting better at what we did. So Sheriff Balaam invited me to enter into this department with one mission, and that was to rebuild it from the ground up and do things the right way. And we started by conducting essentially a full program inventory. We mapped our capacity, and then once we kind of knew what we were working with and where we wanted to go, we built a step-by-step transformation plan. And in the summer of 2024, we presented that to Sheriff Balaam, our executive staff, and the Washoe County Board of Commissioners. And the plan that we presented to them wasn't simply platitudes about change. It was a step-by-step framework to implement evidence-based practices, a reliance on data-driven decision-making. For us, historically, what our department had generally done was made a decision and then scrambled to find data to support that decision. And we made a serious commitment to change that perspective. Additionally, we made a commitment to provide holistic services in our reentry programming. Previously, historically, we had met the needs that we had available to meet or had available to serve. And what we've sought out is providers who can meet an array of needs. So we're seeking a holistic approach as well. And we also committed to defining and measuring and reporting our outcomes. No more guessing or retrofitting data just to justify what we were doing. Next slide, please. But for us, right away, we hit a wall. And when we were asked, does your program reduce recidivism? We weren't really sure how to answer. And it wasn't because we didn't want to. It's because the question itself is complicated. And for us, it looked like, what does recidivism even mean? Is it rearrest or reconviction or reincarceration? And over what time frame are we measuring this? Is it 1 or 3 or 5 years? And that's why the work that I was exposed to through Dr. Kearns, that Dr. Snyder and Ms. Raarwood, hope I'm pronouncing that right, I'm terrible with names, presented on, and this subcommittee is so important on recidivism. We must have a uniform statewide definition of recidivism, and also a framework for how we collect and report on that. I feel like in saying that, let's be clear, I am part of this, talk about recidivism sometimes like it's just a number on a spreadsheet. But every single one of those percentage points represents real people. And we don't have a clear, consistent way to define and track recidivism. When we're not speaking the same language, we're not just mismanaging data, it's that we're mismanaging people's lives. And that data reflects people being victimized again in our communities. It reflects people sitting in our jail cells who may not have been given the right tools or support to succeed the first time around. And if we get this wrong, or when we get it wrong, if we settle for inconsistent definitions or vague outcomes, it's not just a policy issue. It's someone's mother, someone's son, or someone's neighbor paying the price. So there's a real human cost to everything we do in our space. And if we don't have an apples to apples conversation about what success looks like and how we measure it, we'll never be able to hold ourselves accountable to the change that we really care about. Next slide, please. So recidivism is a critical, vital measure, obviously, as was presented on here previously, to direct research, policy, and funding. But as a measure of individual behavior, it's lacking. It's binary, and by its very nature, it's simply measuring failure. It's asking, did someone fail or not? It captures a moment of observed behavior, but not the complexity that led up to that very moment. And what we know is that criminal behavior often isn't caught right away, and it doesn't occur in a vacuum. Most criminal behavior is unobserved. So recidivism reflects these layered interactions between individuals, institutions, staff training, resources, and policy shifts. And this is a real turning point in my life, at least in trying to be more effective in what we do. It was that in understanding and accepting that recidivism offers just a glimpse into a moment in time of this exceedingly complex, messy, interdependent system, this moment of transformation for me personally is helped by, I think, a metaphor, and it's, imagine a jurisdiction that sees a 25% drop in recidivism year over year. And that sounds like a win, it certainly does to me, until we're able to realize after digging through the data that the jail stopped booking low-level offenses due to overcrowding. That's success, which again, at first glance seemed like, for me, it's like we must be killing it with our programming, which is what I would think. Turns out wasn't driven by programming at all. It was driven by a policy change. Next slide, please. And that is why I was so encouraged upon being exposed to the Wisconsin recidivism framework, which I understand now is something the state of Nevada is considering. And you'll see here it illustrated below on this slide. It tracks not just if recidivism occurred, but when, how, under what conditions. You can see on that model whether a reoffense occurred during programming or after someone was exposed to programming. You can see how long someone stayed out of the system. And these nuances are critically important. And this is the data we don't currently have access to across jurisdictions. Sometimes I can't even access this data inside our own agency. Next slide, please. And this, I know there's a lot on this, but what I'd like to illustrate here is there is a very powerful tool this framework offers, and it's the opportunity to add context. You can see down there below that different types of events are color-coded: reoffense, rearrest, reconviction, reincarceration, so we can start to understand the full story, not just the final headline that someone failed or they did not fail. And when I saw this, when I was first exposed to it, it clicked for me. It wasn't just more data. It was a more human way to understand what our participants, the men and women who come down to our programming unit, are going through and how we can support them better. Next slide, please. But there's still a missing piece. And this is the question: what happens along that timeline between each of those events? Between release and a new charge, or between one program and another? That space between those lines, that life matters. And that's the space where people either start to change or possibly start to spiral. Next slide, please. And so that, we believe, or what we're advocating for, is where desistance comes in. And so broadly speaking, desistance is the process by which people stop engaging in law-breaking behavior. But there's another component to that as well, and it's when they begin to adopt pro-social identities. And desistance is not binary. It's gradual, like recovery from addiction. People may relapse along their path and they may struggle, but desistance offers an opportunity to measure movement in the right direction, or movement in any direction for that matter. And so desistance is often divided into two primary fields. I should say two fields. The first is primary desistance. And primary desistance is that reduction in the frequency or severity of criminal behavior. And this is important, because that's what we ultimately want to achieve or influence. But again, due to this complex system that we're working with and these layered interactions in that system, much of that observed criminal behavior is the result of things outside of our control. So a lot of that is subjective, and it's kind of outside of the scope of what we're able to offer. So a secondary focus of desistance is this transformation in self-identity. That's where someone begins to actually see themselves differently and act accordingly to their new identity. And that's what we want to measure in our programming: identity change and behavior change. Next slide, please. So this research that we've been engaged in, and this internal work on changing our department to be something more effective, it forced us to confront something that was deceptively simple, but it's essential. And that's, how do we define successful reentry? And at first, we thought that we needed to define that ourselves, that our programming staff, the sheriff's office, we needed to determine what successful reentry was. But what we realized is that wasn't enough. And instead, we needed to ask our program partners. And rather than ask, we needed to require that our program partners define two things. The first is, what specific behavior change are you trying to produce? And the second is, how will you measure that behavior change? And because what we learned is, the truth is, if it's not measurable, it's not meaningful. And for a long time, we relied on anecdotal data. And as I'm sure many of you know here much better than I do, it's the lowest form of data, but it feels great. When a participant would leave one of our classes and they would say, hey, this is awesome, or this is so freaking helpful, we'd feel like we were doing something right. And on the other end of that spectrum is empirical data. It's real, validated, and sometimes, at least in our case, it was an uncomfortable truth. It was the kind of data that told us what you're doing isn't working and you need to change. This is another metaphor that I think really helps it for me. Relying on anecdotal data is basically like standing at the bedside of a critically ill patient and asking them how they feel, and basing our treatment on their response rather than checking their vital signs. And when they say, I feel fine, it's calming in the moment, but it tells us nothing about these underlying mitigating causes and conditions. Maybe the internal bleeding, the failing organs, the silent warning signs. The empirical data is the heart monitor, it's the blood pressure cuff, it's the labs, and it doesn't sugarcoat the facts, it just tells us the truth. And if we ignore it because it's inconvenient or uncomfortable, we're not just making a bad decision, we're complicit in the outcome. And in our line of work, that outcome is real. It could mean that someone gets victimized, it could mean that someone ends up back in custody, or that someone loses their life. Next slide, please. I'll try and hurry this along. I know I'm kind of a little long-winded. So what we developed is this. It led us to adopt a model rooted in the scientific method, whereas each practitioner that we engage with must define their own theory of change, whereas they tell us what their working hypothesis is. They must also build a logic model around that very hypothesis. What activities and resources are going to lead to the intended change? And additionally, they will be mandated to track the outcomes. Are we observing the behavior changes that we predicted? So we're stepping back from micromanaging theories of change in our department. We're cultivating an environment where people want to partner with us, and we're allowing them to thrive as experts in their field. We're giving each partner the freedom and the accountability to prove what works. And that's what Desistance is. Next slide, please. And these are our 3 broad recommendations that we've started to implement internally already in our facility. The first recommendation is, alongside state-mandated recidivism tracking, that we recommend that every publicly funded or publicly administered reentry program define success in terms of behavior-based outcomes. If we don't define what success looks like, we'll never know if we've achieved it or not. Next slide, please. Second is that we mandate that these programs use standardized tools to measure progress. That progress is engagement, goal attainment, behavioral milestones. This lets us track not just if someone fails, but also if they're moving in the right direction, and possibly gives us a deeper, more meaningful understanding of why they're going there. Next slide, please. And finally, it's that we establish consistent, uniform desistance reporting requirements. And man, this would be amazing. It's that let's make sure the program data, like recidivism data, is reported in a way that supports transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. So if we're looking at recidivism as the snapshot, we're looking at a photo in time and recidivism happened or didn't happen. Desistance is that whole journey. So without desistance, without working together, we really only know whether or not someone failed, not how close they actually came to succeeding. Next slide, please. And to support this, we created a desistance questionnaire that we've already launched and are mandating our service providers fill out as we explore service partnerships together. It's available as that PDF link that you see there. We're certainly not claiming to be the experts or the gurus in any of this, but we want to collaborate with others in the state of Nevada, especially, to refine and expand this tool into something that can have a real statewide impact. And we're really excited to build something together that actually shows what works and what doesn't. So thank you very much. And our belief is if we're working together, like Dr. Kearns, and we were talking before this all started, is if we're working together, we can help prevent the next crime. So thank you. And I'm certainly open for any questions.
EJ, thank you for taking what can be a complex or somewhat difficult to understand concept and really breaking it down and make it simpler for us to understand. I'll open it up to committee members if anyone has any questions.
This is Shayla Holmes. I'm not sure I have a question, but I am anxiously hanging out at the edge of my seat for that recidivism definition and how we're all going to figure out how to track it and how we're going to figure out how to link it. One thing that this committee has been working on is trying to figure out that shared data across the state along a variety of different data points. And the recidivism bucket lives within my wish list of that. If, I understand all of the things that go into why data sharing is hard, but it's one of those things that makes particularly the recidivism conversation so hard, because despite the square miles across our state, somehow we're really small because, we share the same inmates, we share the same criminal behaviors coming from the same folks. And so I'm really anxious to see the progress that we get to make. And I really appreciate what you guys are doing in Washoe County and helping be a leader in that for the rest of us, because if anybody's going to make it happen, it's going to be you guys.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. This has been incredible being with all of you.
Any other questions for committee members? One of the things I'd like to highlight is that as part of this recommendation, Dr. Snyder, who was mentioned in TJ's presentation, and I presented to the Nevada Sentencing Commission on having this definition of recidivism to include desistance. And it was well received, and we got a lot of good questions. But to your point, Dr. Holmes, they ask about a common sharing database, and which we don't have, which doesn't exist. And I know that's was one of your recommendations too, is to have something like that, similar to Virginia's model. So hopefully we can continue to work on this. And I would echo what Dr. Holmes said, and thanks to Washoe County Sheriff's Office for being the leader in this area.
I could just add one more thing, and I could talk about recidivism all day long because we could go down all the different paths. But one of the things I continue to get pushback from my commission on here in Lyon County is they want to see a recidivism model that means never reoffending. And so, you know, whatever definition we land on, it's going to require some explanation. There's going to be critics. And I think we just have to be super cautious as far as what's feasible to track. And then what does that look like as far as success for the individual, right? Because the idea that we somehow would be able to track for perpetuity somebody's ability to reoffend and reoffend on the same status, like offense, reaffirm on, like, what are we gonna, you know, every time somebody in drug court gets rearrested for a dirty UA, is that going to be a reoffense? Like, what is that? I mean, there's so many micro components to that conversation that becomes so big so fast. So yeah, I do think at least at some point in time in my lifetime we'll get a definition, but I do know that it's going to end up having to that definition is going to require a lot of education alongside it.
If you don't mind if I hop on TJ Mills again for the record, just to piggyback along with what you were just saying, is that for us, what we really started to see is, I really have said that about a bazillion times today, but we do look at this as a team effort, and we get to be a part of a really special thing here. What we've seen is that our community partners, especially when they're operating the right kind of programming, are much more effective at tracking outcomes long-term than we are. And that even if there's any implied power dynamics between self-reporting long-term of any criminal behavior, it's not effective reporting. And so the relationships, and we've found that everything is based on these relationships. When they are built the right way, starting sometimes in our facility at booking and carrying back out with wraparound services into the community, we can much more effectively track long-term outcomes. And in that way as well, I know it's not a zero-sum game, but when we see cycles, these generational cycles of incarceration start to be chipped away at by a parent who is spending less time incarcerated rather than, whether or not they ever recidivated again or not, they're spending less time incarcerated and spending more time engaged in pro-social behavior as a father or a mother. There's certainly downstream effects that we're looking into how we can monitor and track those, to where I think everyone would be better off if we can step away from that succeeded or failed approach.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the conversation. And one of the things I would add is to Shayla's comments is, why do we expect something more of someone coming out of the criminal justice system? If you look at medical models, especially, we deal with substance use, and somebody in recovery that falls back into old patterns, or, falls off the wagon, whatever the words you want to use, their rates are similar, or if not slightly better than those that have lifestyle diseases, diabetes, heart disease, those sorts of things. So why do we expect more from that population and our re-entry population than we do of those in the medical field? So that's what I always go back to based on my background. And I would like to ask, Nancy, given your role with the treatment, do you have any comments or thoughts on this?
Yeah, Nancy Lemler for the record. Yes, I do. Being the fact that this is our wheelhouse, we are prison reentry only. But we're very, very small currently. Ridge House was developed in, I think they started in 1982, and unfortunately they never had a mindset on keeping data. Because I would be able to say, here's all your recidivism, but that just isn't there. So I feel a little sad about not having that mindset, because it would have been a great resource. I'm developing that now, so we have better records. But one of the problems that Ridge House experienced is we tried to do everything for everyone. Like we were doing CPS work, we were doing coming out of jail, we were doing, reunification with your children. We can't do that. So now we're prison reentry only. We don't have outpatient care currently. We might do that in the future. So we can specialize on what is happening and use our admin resources more effectively to track what's really happening, so it doesn't just fall by the wayside. And the thing that stands out in my mind is the distinction between someone and the clients that we work with, someone who just cycles through jail and never kicks it up to prison, or people who repeat prison. We see both. And also like that cycle of how just the mindset about the bartering that an individual makes with prison is very interesting. It's like, oh, I did 3 years, I can do 7. It's not a big deal. Like the disconnect, and also the family generational pattern is something that we're starting to really take note of. It's, it's like, it's just a rite of passage. It's what you do. And I'll tell you, well, of course you go to prison. Your dad and your grandfather and your grandmother went to prison, so you would too. So there are multiple layers to this complex situation. And I think defining recidivism is it needs to occur, of course, a great direction, but I think defining like more like the areas, I think, is a big piece of it, or it's going to get lost even. And I agree with Dr. Holmes said, I want to be alive when they finally get it, get it dialed in. But I wish I had better data, but hopefully we'll be able to be a better partner in the future, because we're really starting to capture data at this point with a much smaller specific population. And the only other thing I would add is we're also addressing crime specifically as an addictive feature.
Mm.
So there are a lot of addictive qualities to crime, criminalistic patterns, the criminalistic thinking, the adrenaline rush, all the sense of power, all the things that go with it. So we're really working to define that more specifically and not just substance use.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you bring up a really interesting point on that. And one of the things too that I would highlight is under that Wisconsin model that TJ talked about and that we've looked at in this committee is you need to know what constitutes recidivism. So for different places, is it is it some type of failing a drug test, for example? Is that considered recidivism or isn't it? And then being able to share that data across the way. So we do have a long way to go on this, I think, but we all have to start somewhere, right? TJ, thank you. And I don't know if you had any comments anything you wanted to say after Nancy's statements.
Nothing specific to that, just thank you for letting the Washington County Sheriff's Office be a part of this. We're always excited to collaborate and contribute however we can. So we're just excited also to learn from the experts in this field. We got a long ways to go, but thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here and hope to continue to work with you. At this point, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is to discuss and draft proposed 2025 response subcommittee recommendations. And one of the things that as we look at this, we've had a number of presentations and we've had some recommendations from the presentations. And I don't know, Crystal, I know you talked about maybe reworking the definition that, or the recidivism.
Yes, and I do have that on a future slide when we get to our current recommendations, if you want me to show that. And I did note for members when sending out materials that there were a number of recommendations embedded in the notes, particularly from our June meeting and the presentation from Dr. Morgan. Things to amplify the implementation of the bridge model and encourage hospital buy-in, and developing value-based payment metrics, things like that. That may or may not be appropriate for this subcommittee, but I felt might be important for you all to review so that we can translate speaker presentations into recommendations when appropriate and when they address needs that you all are seeing in the field as subject matter experts as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. We'll go ahead and just go with first recommendation. So if you want to move to this one, Dr. Holmes, do you want to talk about this one? This is your recommendation.
This is the one I think we were hoping to have a presentation from, I should know his name and not call him Tall Cop. From the Tall Cop.
Jermaine Galloway.
Galloway, thank you. But nonetheless, attempts to get some language that would make transparent packaging required for over-the-counter substances that have some of these addictive properties and qualities that are impossible to create legal language around. That's part of the problem that we have, is that there's over-the-counter drugs that have the same qualities as illegal drugs, but through chemical alterations, name changes, all of that stuff. And there's no way we're ever going to be able to keep up with that from a legal perspective. So trying to figure out language that requires transparency in packaging, that eliminates the ability, at least in the state of Nevada, for these packages to appear to be nutrition supplements or kid-friendly or mood enhancers, like just clear language as far as what the outcomes of the contents are. I think that's probably like our best bet. And then to put a age restriction on them. So that way they could be managed the way tobacco and alcohol and other legal substances that aren't safe for youth.
Just a quick question. Do you see kratom falling within this as well? Because I know that's been a problematic topic as well.
Yeah, kratom, it's the mushrooms, it's the altered form of cannabis that's like the there's so many, the list is so long, and yet they have these same effects on our brains and same addictive qualities. And the other part too is individuals working a program, the majority of these substances don't even trigger on a UA. So, you know, there's really no one size fits all approach to it. But I think if we can start trying to put some regulatory compliance around it, we can at least start encouraging some folks to think twice. Because I think some folks right now, I mean, when you walk up to the counter at the 7-Eleven and a lot of these substances are hanging right there and they say calming and like, you know, enhance your focus. And they don't a lot of folks don't take the time to even read what's in their soda. So, you know, I think if we could get some regulatory compliance around the packaging and around the age groups, that's a good place to start.
Any questions or comments from the other committee members on this recommendation at this point? I know we do have the presentation upcoming.
Dr.
Here.
Kurtz.
Oh, go ahead.
Crystal Duarte, for the record, I just wanted to clarify, I think what I heard you saying, Dr. Holmes, is there may be a revision to this recommendation to make it inclusive of drugs that will come on the market, or like, I don't know if I heard that correctly, and I wasn't sure if there's any work that you and I could do to revise that, or if we're waiting to hear from Officer Galloway.
I think, I personally, I mean, unless anybody has any knowledge around it, would love to hear Officer Galloway's thoughts or how he would compose language around it based off of what, because I know he works nationally, so he might have some better understanding of how things have worked elsewhere. But I was hoping within our language that it wouldn't even necessarily be, what's currently on the market or what's not. I think I was intentionally trying to keep it broad enough to encompass anything. So anything that has a psychoactive substance. So if by nature, if what's in that ingredients list falls within a psychoactive substance nature, that it's required to have clear labeling of what's in it and be restricted to above the age of 20.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that we have more to learn again from Officer Galloway in his upcoming presentation. And I know these are over the counter, so the regulation control isn't there, but do you see Board of Pharmacy being involved with this process?
They'd probably be a good partner. They'd be yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on our first recommendation? It seems like we still have some more work to do on it. We'll move to the next recommendation, the next slide, which was my recommendation about revising our recommendation on having a definition of recidivism and policies related to measuring and reporting to include desistance, as you've just heard that great presentation from TJ Mills. And I know that I also, in addition to doing the presentation for the Sentencing Commission, also provided this recommendation with the backups to DPBH, because I know that through some of their grant funding, they do fund some deflection and diversion programs as well. Any thoughts or comments from the committee? Crystal, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, Dr. Crystal Duarte for the record. During TJ's presentation, I did pull in some of his recommendations. So this is something for discussion and consideration. I've added the bolded language as what is new. So recommend state agencies under the legislative, judicial, and executive branches involved with deflection and diversion programs have a comprehensive definition of recidivism and desistance and standardized policies relating to measuring and reporting recidivism. Additionally, require that all publicly funded or publicly administered reentry programs define success using clear behavioral based and outcomes, and that programs articulate what meaningful behavior change looks like for participants using tools for measuring engagement, goal attainment, and behavioral milestones.
Yeah, that's good. I like that, because I know we've had the conversation of if somebody, commits a lesser crime, or, they aren't having interaction with law enforcement as much, what are our defining? And I really liked the comments that Nancy made about some crime can be addictive because of how it affects the brain. So I like that. I'd ask Christine if you're available and can comment. What do you think that the sheriffs and chiefs would think about this?
Well, I think they're gonna like the direction we're going and addressing it. But just like when we first started the conversation, it's finding a consensus on, what are we going to agree on for a definition. I think I'll forward them where we're at and with the additions that Crystal made and see if that sparks any more conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a good idea. And I would highlight that when we gave the presentation to the sentencing committee, we highlighted that the only one currently in the state is NDOCs, and it's a return to prison within 3 years. And I think there was a little backlash on them for that. And while we will say that we recognize that for their purposes and what they were looking at, it was a good operational measurable definition. However, it doesn't get into all the things that we're talking about. And Nancy, I see you came off mute if you have other comments.
Yeah, this is Nancy Lennon for the record. Wow, I really hope that would be something we could create as I'm reading that. I do think it's a great start. It would have to include hard data points and also subjective and objective information, because almost all behavioral health is self-report. That makes it a problem. So I can think of 3 clients right now in my head that when they left, they were great, and one just picked up a 7 to 15. So he was not great, but according to him, he was great. And so because it's such a variable, I think definitely having hard data points about the time not involved in the legal system is going to be a critical piece of that. Yeah, as I look at measuring gate, all of that, I'm like, oh yeah, all these were check the boxes, great. Didn't even make it a year. So I don't know how I would define that any better. But it helps me look at it and to think about it. So I'll be looking forward to helping out with that, but I wish I had a really solid answer.
It's a tough problem we're trying to tackle. So no, I appreciate your comments, and and even I think looking at that continuum on the Wisconsin model, are we getting better at less and less people and addressing the topics that cause someone to recidivate? So, it's not going to happen overnight, but again, just like our presentation on the workforce, it's going to be a long-term program. Anything else, Crystal, on this at this point, or continue to kind of refine it and get feedback from the committee members on your revisions?
Crystal Duarte for the record. I think that's the best way forward, so we can expect to discuss this in future meetings. And just a note on, the next slide had us maybe drafting recommendations, but I know we're getting close to time. I think everybody's aware we have more time to develop recommendations this year, as we won't be meeting in December to finalize recommendations. We will do that in accordance with the timeline revision from AB 19. So we have until about July of next year to continue to work on recommendations. Not that we should draw that out. We should probably add some new recommendations into the mix. And so if you have any, please submit the survey, or give me a call and we can walk through the survey or walk through your recommendation together. I can do some background research, whatever would be helpful in augmenting the response subcommittee's recommendations.
And one thing I would add, I know that Crystal pulled out some of the potential recommendations for the response subcommittee from Dr. Morgan's presentation. If you could take a look at those, and because I think a lot of them are more suited to treatment, because they talk about, MOUD treatment in the ER. The one that really hit me for response was the EMS with the leave behind naloxone program. That to me is more response related, but we may want to look at that. And then I know prevention is also looking at a low barrier naloxone program too, so that may fall better with them as well. But if the committee members will take a look at those recommendations and provide us some feedback on what you think, whether we should flip those to another committee. Okay. go ahead and to the next slide. So yeah, we'll work on this one then, and the next time drafting, if anybody has any other recommendations, and move on to item number 7, which is review 2025 response subcommittee meeting topics. And as it was already discussed, we have the presentation is drug and alcohol prevention, education and enforcement by Officer Jermaine Galloway, AKA the tall cop. So I think he'll be able to provide us some good direction on that. And then also to look at the effect of drugs on the economy of the state from the Recovery Friendly Workplace Initiative from Foundation for Recovery. We have those two. If there's other presentations that we haven't hit that you'd like to see, please reach out to Crystal and let her know of those. And then our meetings, September 2nd and November 4th from 11 to 12:30. We'll move on to item number 8, which is public comment. Again, we'll open it up if there's any public comment, all the same as with the first public comment session. Anyone have public comment? I don't see anyone coming off mute or raised hands. Crystal, do you see anyone?
I don't see anyone. I thought I heard someone, a different voice pop in, and so I'm not sure if someone had come off mute and wanted to offer public comment. But does not appear that's the case. If you do, it's fine to come off mute and the chair can recognize you, or you can raise your hand if that's a function that you can find within Zoom. But also okay to just come off mute and be recognized by the chair.
While we wait for just a minute, I just would like to thank our presenters again today. These were very exceptional presentations and thought-provoking for our committee members. Beth Scott, I see you raised your hand.
Thank you, Dr. Kearns.
Yes.
My question is regarding recommendation number 2. Crystal, specifically, we're talking about the data collection and all of that good information that'll be necessary to capture. My question is, as Nevada Medicaid moves forward with the 1115 reentry waiver, there's a lot of data collection that will come out of that. Crystal, or anybody else on the subcommittee, has anybody spoke with Medicaid to talk about maybe what there are their implementation milestones that have been submitted to CMS so that nobody's duplicating data collection and we're kind of working at this from a collective or a collaborative kind of lens?
Thank you for that. That's a great question. I would say we have talked to Medicaid, and I have had presentations on the 1115, but I think the point we probably need to re-engage with them.
Perfect. I think that would be super helpful. I will look forward to those future conversations and collaboration. I think that'll be helpful from everybody's perspective. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment.
Dr. Kearns, can I throw my 2 cents in on that?
Please, go ahead.
Sorry, I know we're all trying to get off at 12:31. When it comes to the data dashboard that we were looking at, or what that looks like in the state of Virginia and what those previous presentations looked like, was it's not necessarily that all of those systems are one, but that there is a centralized place that's pulling from all of those agencies that do collect that data to house it and be able to, my words are gone, but like cross sector it and be able to look at it from, this piece of data from this agency or sector and this piece of data from this agency or sector, and how they integrate together, but not necessarily trying to create one massive integrated database. I'm not sure if that's even a thing anywhere, but so I think like, yes, we don't, Medicaid would absolutely, and their data would absolutely be a giant component of that. And it would be that and I think there is a lot of duplication of efforts in regards to local data collection and state data collection. And I think that just comes down to a lack of access, right? So if we don't have access to state data, we're going to collect our own because we've got to do our measures and prove our programs equally, you know? So I think that's like that is a really big public comment conversation. Sorry.
Can appreciate
I-
that. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know that we, through Crystal and her staff, have continued to reach out and try to get a status update. And again, something that's not going to, I think, happen overnight, but is going to be a long-term project as well. Crystal, do you have anything to add? I know that you've been in communications with our chief information officer, chief technical officer. I can't even remember the name.
Yeah, I think it was something like that. Crystal Duarte for the record. I don't have an update except that the one that was provided, I believe at our June meeting, that he still believes it's an excellent idea, that the infrastructure isn't available yet in Nevada, but they are meeting more regularly across divisions as part of the governor's initiative on that, so that there's the potential, or the early foundation has been laid, but the technical system is not built or anything imagined, I don't believe yet.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other public comment? And I will apologize for running over. But we've had, I think, a lot of good discussion and topics. At this point, we'll move on to agenda item number 10, which is our adjournment. So thank you all, and I'll see you in August. I mean, September. I'm still in July.
Don't be too hard on yourself. I think I helped run us over, so I'll take my ownership there.
No problem. Thank you all.